nothing weird or out of the ordinary that might have to get looked at by a specialist or a veterinarian. Now, it's one thing to look good on the outside, but some people could tell you, well, I look good on the outside once. Turns out I was actually quite sick on the inside, and you might not know it, right? So it's very, very important to know what's going on inside the body as well. And we have trained these animals to help us with some more advanced forms of husbandry. And it's pretty much anything you folks are capable of doing at a doctor's office, we can do with these animals. Everything from blood sampling, urine sampling, voluntary ultrasounds, x-rays, just to name a few. So let's talk a little bit about some of those things. Let's start with blood sampling. Who wants to take a guess as to where we draw blood from on a dolphin? Not all at once. Just shout it out if you have an idea. Heart tail, heart fin, anything else? Alright, we'll take a poll. Who thinks it's tail? Who thinks it's fin? Who thinks it's neither of those two?
Oh, lui fait un petit massage.
There's like 10 participants, so there's your answer! It is the tail. So those flukes. There's not a lot of blubber. The veins are very close to the surface. It's very easy to insert a needle and extract some blood so that it can be tested at a later date. Now, I did mention other forms of husbandry. Things like urine sampling. We do urine sampling with our animals on a fairly regular basis. Now, you may have a chance to see a urine behavior in and around our habitat, and you may have noticed that there was actually urine going into the water, but we weren't actually collecting it. Now, a lot of people ask us, why are you having the animals pee in the water if we're not going to collect it? And don't worry, there is reason to our madness. The reason why? We want these animals to be comfortable performing these healthcare behaviors on a regular basis. We don't want to be put into a serious medical situation where we need to run tests on our animals, and it's a struggle to convince them that this is a good idea. If this is an everyday occurrence, another day at the office, nothing out of the ordinary, the animals probably not going to be phased, and there'll be little to no stress involved. And that's a very, very important thing to keep in mind as we do want to minimize the stress in all situations with these animals. Now, obviously, you think, well, how do you do all this stuff? Well, these animals well trained. And how do you train a dolphin? Well, it's a very specific language. I've tried speaking dolphin. It doesn't work. So we need other... Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just not good at it. I know. Okay, let's move on, Helen. She's always making fun of me. We're going to talk a little bit about another language which is known as operant conditioning. Are there any psychiatrists, psychologists, or people studying those two fields in my audience today? Good. No one will be offended because I'm going to mention the psychological principle and I'm going to boil it down to very, very simple terms. Operant conditioning basically means as follows. Anytime the animal exhibits a behavior that we like, that we'd like to see again, they are rewarded or reinforced for it. There are two levels of reinforcement, primary and secondary. Now this is more for the kids. What is the best form of reward for a dolphin? Right over there, fish, and Helen saying it, fish! Alright, that's one. But think about it. If we give these animals fish and squid, anytime they did things right, they might get overweight. Just like if you ate a cookie every time they did things right, you probably become a fat person. So, we need to find different forms of reinforcement known as secondary reinforcement. Now, this is open to anyone. What's a good form of secondary reinforcement for a dolphin? Playing with them, yeah, definitely. Maybe some interaction time with their trainers. Anything else? No one, eh? Well, I'm sure we're going to see some from our trainers. Sometimes it's high energy aerials and acrobatics, sending them on some of those behaviors, maybe in objects inside the habitat. We did see Charlotte had a ball in her hands earlier, and that's a great form of enrichment for these animals. But quite honestly, nothing could be more exciting for these animals than this. We're giving them the joy of spraying their trainers with this flashy behavior. Charlotte just got something. That's very nice. Leo as well. Now, once these animals are properly reinforced, we can participate in some pretty remarkable research projects. We're doing two such projects with these animals right now. The first being a metabolic study, and as the ladies are leaping all over the place inside the habitat, it's a great segue into it. We want to know how much energy it takes for these dolphins to do what they do. Look at her go spinning in the water really, really fast. It's pretty impressive. But how do they do that? Well, we train our animals to do something really miraculous, particularly for a dolphin. We train them to stay still. That's impressive. Because usually they're not staying still, they're doing stuff like this. Now we train them to stay still because they actually have a metabolic chamber that floats on top of them that measures their oxygen rates, which allows us to calculate their metabolic rate, or in other words, how much time it takes to convert their food into energy. Now, our hope is to be able to predict how fishing practices are going to impact the populations of dolphins off the coast of BC. Now, the second research project is an echolocation research project, and it basically is analyzing their use of sound in relation to fishing nets. Now, why that's such a fitting project? Well, you might not know their backstories, but both of these dolphins were actually rescued and rehabilitated from fixed fishing nets off the coast of Japan. Now, they were rescued, rehabilitated, deemed non-releasable, and given a permanent home here at the Wild Coast. Though it's not a good thing, these